From the first part of the story, we saw how the friendship of three girls was tested when a prince noticed one of them, leading to unexpected twists. But what happens when jealousy and betrayal creep into their bond? Get ready to dive deeper into the unfolding drama in part 2 as the true intentions of each character begin to surface. Don't forget to like and subscribe to African Folktales by Nychi and share your thoughts in the comments below. Now back to our story. Though the villagers rejoiced in Adanna's rise to prominence, not everyone in Azira was pleased. Chizoba, once certain of her own success, could not hide her bitterness. Every time she saw Adanna walking through the village with the prince or heard the whispers of admiration for her former friend, a dark jealousy twisted inside her. Days passed, and while Adanna blossomed in her new role, learning the ways of the palace and preparing for her future as queen, Chizoba's envy only deepened. She began avoiding Adanna altogether, preferring to keep her distance rather than face her friend's newfound happiness. "It should have been me," she would mutter under her breath, pacing in her family's compound. How could he choose her over me? Even Ifunanya, who had once shared in Chizoba's schemes, began to feel uncomfortable around her. Though Ifunanya had also desired the prince's attention, she had accepted that Adanna's kindness had won his heart. Yet Chizoba's growing bitterness made their friendship tense. One evening, as the village prepared for yet another gathering at the palace, Chizoba could no longer contain her anger. In a moment of frustration, she stormed into Ifunanya's home. "You see what she's become?" she spat, her voice trembling with rage. "She thinks she's better than us now, but I know the truth and I won't let her take everything without a fight." Ifunanya sighed, shaking her head. "Chizoba, it's over. The prince has made his choice. We should be happy for her. She's still our friend." "Friend," Chizoba sneered. "She never deserved that title, and she certainly doesn't deserve to be queen." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "But I have a plan. If we can't take the prince from her, we can at least ruin her happiness." Ifunanya's eyes widened, her discomfort turning to alarm. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice shaking. "You're not thinking clearly, Chizoba. This isn't the way." But Chizoba was too consumed by her jealousy to listen. "If you won't help me, then stay out of my way," she snapped, her eyes glinting with cold determination. "I'll bring her down myself if I have to." Meanwhile, Adanna's life at the palace was not without its challenges. Though she had the prince's favor, she often felt out of place among the courtiers and noblewomen. Many of them, like Chizoba, saw her as an outsider, unworthy of the title she was about to claim. Whispers followed her wherever she went, soft murmurs of doubt and jealousy that chipped away at her confidence. "She's just a village girl," they would say. "What does she know of ruling? She's too simple, too quiet." Adanna tried to brush off these comments, focusing instead on her duties and the prince's words of encouragement. But the weight of their scrutiny pressed heavily on her. Every time she entered a room, she could feel the eyes of the court upon her, judging her every move. One evening, as Adanna sat in the palace gardens, reflecting on all that had happened, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw Prince Obina approaching, his face soft with concern. "Adanna," he said gently, sitting beside her. "I can see that something is troubling you." Adanna hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's the people, Obina. They don't think I'm worthy. I hear them talk. They say I don't belong here." The prince reached out, taking her hand in his. "You are worthy, Adanna. Don't let their words bring you down. They don't see what I see in you." Adanna looked up at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "But what if I can't live up to their expectations? What if I fail?" Prince Obina smiled, his gaze steady. "You won't fail. You have a heart that is true and strong. That's what makes a great queen, not titles or wealth. It's your kindness and humility that will guide you." Adanna's heart swelled with gratitude, but deep down, the seed of doubt planted by Chizoba's manipulations and the court's whispers still lingered. As Adanna struggled to find her place, Chizoba put her plan into action. She had heard rumors of a powerful seer who lived in the hills outside of Azira, a woman said to have the ability to curse those who stood in the way of destiny. Fueled by her bitterness, Chizoba set out one moonless night to find the seer, her mind filled with thoughts of revenge. After a long and treacherous journey, she arrived at the seer's hut. The woman, old and wise, sat by the fire, her eyes gleaming as Chizoba entered. "I know why you have come," the seer said in a voice like the wind, her eyes never leaving the fire. "You seek to bring down one who has found favor in the eyes of the prince." Chizoba nodded, her hands trembling with anticipation. "I want to ruin her. Take away everything she has. Can you help me?" The seer looked up, her gaze piercing. "Be careful what you wish for, child. The path you are choosing is dark and dangerous." But Chizoba's heart was too hardened by envy to heed the warning. "I don't care, I want her to suffer." The seer sighed, but she nodded. "Very well. But know this, what you do in hatred will come back to you in kind." With that, the seer gave Chizoba a vial of dark liquid. "Use this wisely," she warned. "It will sow discord and doubt in the heart of the one you seek to harm." Back in the village, Adanna continued to prepare for the wedding, but a sense of unease hung over her. The whispers seemed to grow louder, the judgmental stares more frequent. It was as if a dark cloud had settled over her heart, making her question everything she had worked so hard to believe in. Chizoba watched from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The day of the grand festival was fast approaching, and the village of Azira was alive with anticipation. Decorations were being hung, musicians practiced their tunes, and the palace prepared for a celebration unlike any other. This would be the official announcement of Adanna as the prince's future queen. Yet, beneath the surface of all the merriment, something dark stirred. Chizoba's plot was about to unfold. Adanna, though still humble and gentle, could not shake the growing weight of insecurity in her heart. Despite Prince Obina's reassurances, she felt an invisible force pushing her down, whispering lies in her ear. She began to withdraw from the preparations, her smile fading with each passing day. The villagers, once enchanted by her kindness, began to notice her distant behavior. "Maybe she's not as strong as we thought," some would say. "Perhaps she really doesn't deserve to be queen." Chizoba watched from afar, a small smile creeping across her lips. The time had come. On the night before the festival, she made her move. With the vial of dark liquid clutched tightly in her hand, she made her way to the palace under the cover of darkness. She had bribed one of the palace servants to leave Adanna's chambers unlocked. Slipping inside, Chizoba quietly approached the small bowl of water that Adanna used for her nightly prayers. "This will be enough to break her," Chizoba whispered to herself as she poured the contents of the vial into the water. The liquid swirled for a moment before disappearing entirely, leaving no trace of the poison that now tainted it. Satisfied, Chizoba slipped out of the palace unnoticed, her heart racing with anticipation. By tomorrow, everyone will see Adanna for the weakling she truly is, she thought, her mind swimming with thoughts of revenge and victory. In her chambers, Adanna knelt beside her bed, preparing to say her nightly prayers. She was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, but as always, she sought peace through her prayers. As she dipped her hands into the bowl of water, a strange chill ran up her spine. She hesitated for a moment, but then dismissed the feeling, whispering her prayers softly under her breath. Unbeknownst to her, the poison was beginning to take effect. It was not a physical poison, but something much darker, a spell that would twist her heart, amplifying her insecurities, her fears, and her doubts. As she lay down to sleep, the whispers grew louder in her mind. "You don't belong here. The prince will realize you're not worthy. You're just a simple village girl." Adanna tossed and turned in her bed, her mind plagued with nightmares of rejection and failure. The weight of her insecurities, which had always lingered in the back of her mind, now seemed unbearable. By morning, her spirit was nearly broken. The day of the festival dawned bright and clear, the village of Azira alive with celebration. The streets were lined with stalls selling colorful fabrics, sweet-smelling foods, and all manner of trinkets. The palace gates were thrown open to welcome guests from all corners of the land, and the villagers buzzed with excitement as they prepared to witness the momentous occasion. But in the midst of the celebrations, Adanna felt like a shadow. As she stepped out into the courtyard, her heart was heavy, her steps slow and uncertain. The poison had taken hold, and the once kind and gentle Adanna now felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Her friends, Ifunanya and Chizoba, stood nearby, dressed in their finest clothes, smiling and greeting the villagers. Ifunanya had softened her stance in recent days, beginning to regret the way she and Chizoba had treated Adanna. But Chizoba's eyes gleamed with triumph. She could see the cracks forming in Adanna's composure, and she knew it was only a matter of time before everything fell apart. As Adanna approached the crowd, the prince stood at the center of the gathering, dressed in royal regalia, his eyes scanning the faces of those present. When he saw Adanna, his face lit up with a warm smile, but Adanna could not meet his gaze. The weight of the poison in her heart dragged her down, making her feel unworthy of his love, his attention, everything. Prince Obinna noticed her hesitation, a flicker of concern crossing his face. He stepped forward, gently taking her hand in his. "Adanna, is something wrong?" he asked softly. Adanna forced a smile, but it did not reach her eyes. "No, nothing. I'm just tired," she replied, her voice weak and uncertain. Throughout the festival, Adanna remained distant, her usual warmth replaced with a cold detachment. The villagers began to whisper among themselves, questioning whether she was truly fit to be their future queen. Chizoba watched from the shadows, her heart swelling with pride as she saw her plan unfolding perfectly. "It's only a matter of time," she thought, smirking. But Prince Obinna was no fool. He had seen the kindness in Adanna's heart, and he knew that something was deeply wrong. He began to observe her more closely, noting the way she avoided eye contact, the way her hands trembled when she spoke, the emptiness in her once bright eyes. That evening, after the festival had ended and the guests had begun to leave, Prince Obinna found Adanna alone in the palace gardens. She was sitting by the fountain, her head bowed, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "Adanna," he called out softly, approaching her. "Please tell me what's troubling you." Adanna looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I feel lost, like I'm not good enough. I hear these voices telling me I'm unworthy, that I don't deserve you." Prince Obinna knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. "Listen to me," he said firmly, his voice filled with emotion. "You are more than worthy. You have a heart unlike anyone I've ever known, kind, humble, and true. Don't let those voices take that away from you." Adanna's lip quivered as she listened to his words, but the doubt still lingered in her heart. But what if they're right? What if I'm just a simple village girl? Prince Obinna shook his head. "No, you are not just a village girl. You are my queen, Adanna, and I will not let anyone or anything take that from you." As the prince's words sank in, the poison's hold on Adanna began to weaken. The whispers in her mind grew quieter, and for the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope. But Chizoba's plan was not finished yet. The quiet of the palace gardens surrounded them, the soft rustling of leaves the only sound in the night air. As Prince Obinna held Adanna's trembling hands, a newfound strength slowly began to rise within her. His words, filled with sincerity and love, cut through the lingering poison that clouded her mind. But just as Adanna's heart started to lighten, a sharp voice shattered the moment. "Adanna, there you are?" Chizoba's voice carried across the garden as she hurried toward them, her face painted with concern, though her eyes flickered with something darker. "I've been looking for you everywhere." Adanna instinctively stiffened at Chizoba's approach, her insecurities once again bubbling to the surface. The prince noticed her reaction, his eyes narrowing slightly as he stood, stepping protectively in front of her. "Is something the matter, Chizoba?" he asked, his tone polite but guarded. Chizoba put on her best smile, though her heart raced with anticipation. "I just wanted to check on Adanna. She's seemed off lately, hasn't she? I've been so worried about her." Her voice dripped with false sweetness, but Prince Obinna wasn't easily fooled. He glanced back at Adanna, who had shrunk slightly at Chizoba's words, before turning his attention back to the supposed friend. Adanna has been struggling with something, he said, his voice measured. But I wonder, Chizoba, if you know more about that than you're letting on. The smile faltered on Chizoba's face for just a second, but she quickly recovered. Me? Of course not, my prince. I only want what's best for her. She placed a hand on her chest, feigning innocence. But before Prince Obinna could respond, a figure stepped out from the shadows behind them. It was Ifeanyi, one of the palace guards and a trusted confidant of the prince. His expression was serious, his eyes locked onto Chizoba. My prince, Ifeanyi began, his voice low and steady. I think you should hear what I've discovered. Adanna, Prince Obinna, and Chizoba turned to face him, confusion etched on their faces. Ifeanyi stepped forward, producing a small vial from his pocket, the same vial that Chizoba had used to poison Adanna's water. I found this in the palace gardens, hidden near the servants' quarters, Ifeanyi explained, his eyes never leaving Chizoba. It's a powerful potion, one that's meant to cloud the mind and amplify insecurities. Someone has been using it to weaken Adanna. Adanna's breath caught in her throat as she realized what had been happening to her. The whispers, the self-doubt, the overwhelming sense of worthlessness. It hadn't been her all along. It was the poison. Chizoba's face paled, and for the first time she seemed at a loss for words. She opened her mouth to deny the accusation, but Ifeanyi continued. I've spoken to one of the palace servants, he said, his voice growing more confident. She admitted that she was bribed by Chizoba to leave Adanna's chamber door unlocked the night before the festival. Prince Obinna's expression darkened as he turned to face Chizoba fully. Is this true? He demanded, his voice low and filled with anger. Chizoba's facade cracked, her eyes darting between Adanna, the prince, and Ifeanyi. She could feel the walls closing in on her. I only wanted to help, she stammered, trying to salvage what little remained of her plan. Adanna was never strong enough to be queen. I was trying to protect the kingdom. But her words fell flat. Prince Obinna's eyes were cold as he looked at her, disappointment and fury battling for control. You were trying to protect yourself, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You let your jealousy and pride consume you, and you tried to destroy someone as pure as Adanna because of it. Chizoba fell silent, her head lowering in shame. She knew there was no way out of this. With a wave of his hand, the prince called for 2 guards to escort Chizoba away. You will face judgment for your actions, he said firmly, his voice carrying the weight of finality. But for now, leave this place. As Chizoba was led away, Adanna stood still, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't believe what had just happened. The betrayal of her closest friend, the poison, the prince's unwavering support. It was all too much to take in. Prince Obinna turned back to her, his expression softening as he took her hands in his once more. Adanna, he said gently, you are stronger than you know. You have a heart that shines brighter than any jewel in the kingdom. I see you, not just for your beauty, but for the strength of your spirit. Never doubt that again. Adanna looked up at him, tears welling in her eyes, but this time they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of hope. Thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, the prince replied, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Just promise me that you'll believe in yourself as much as I believe in you. For the first time in what felt like ages, Adanna smiled, a real, genuine smile. And in that moment, she felt the weight of her insecurities lift, replaced by the warmth of love and acceptance. The next day, the festival resumed, but this time the atmosphere was different. The villagers had heard whispers of Chizoba's treachery, but more importantly, they had seen the prince's unwavering devotion to Adanna. As she walked through the village square, hand in hand with the prince, the people bowed in respect, not just for their future queen, but for the woman who had shown them what true strength and humility looked like. The poison may have tried to break her, but Adanna had emerged stronger than ever, her heart now filled with the knowledge that she was more than enough. The prince had chosen her not just for her beauty, but for the purity and resilience of her soul. And so, as the sun set on the village of Azira, Adanna stood beside Prince Obinna, ready to embrace her future as the queen she was always meant to be, a queen whose strength came not from power or wealth, but from the depth of her heart. Thank you for joining us for the exciting conclusion of this story. What a journey it's been, from hidden insecurities to unexpected triumph. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more incredible tales from African Folktales by Nychi. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and don't hesitate to suggest new story ideas for our next video. Your input is always welcome.